But first on to round three, closing statements. Our motion is, Islam is a religion of peace. And speaking first against the motion, Ayaan Hirsi Ali, a resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute and a critic of fundamentalist Islam.
Islam is not a religion of peace, and I woke up to the facts on the 11th of September 2001. Perhaps I should have woken up to the facts earlier, but I admit that I did that then at that time. Talking to people of my faith, Islam, and my friends, and discussing with them, I remember all kinds of fallacious arguments, but I remember one consistent thing, and that was to exempt Islam from any criticism. It was culture, it wasn't Islam. But a religion is born in a culture, and if that culture is not peaceful, then that religion is not peaceful. I was told it's politics. We've heard it tonight many times. It's not the religion. But Islam not only has a pious dimension, but it also has a political dimension, a complex system of laws, a political philosophy on how society should be organized. And if you look at that political system, it's anything but peaceful. What emancipated me from the order to submit my will completely to Allah, which in practice means the concentration of power in the hands of a few, was to learn to think critically, the Enlightenment. Vote against this motion and open up the flows of Islam for debate in order that Muslims, those who are not yet emancipated, may take charge of their own reason, of their own faculty. Vote against the motion that Islam is a religion of peace, and toss that fallacy into the trash can of history. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Our motion is, Islam is a religion of peace. Now to summarize his closing position for the motion, her position for the motion, Zeba Khan, writer and advocate for Muslim American civic engagement.
Thank you. Faisal Shahzad, the underwear bomber, and the group of young men that were picked up in Pakistan. All of them were for violence and trying to attack our country and learn how to attack our country elsewhere. But the one thing else that the media consistently forgets to mention, or conveniently forgets to mention, is who turned all of them in. It was Muslims. It was their family. Because that is a Quranic principle, that you stand up for justice, even if it's against yourself. And in this case, someone's son, or several people's sons, or the underwear bomber's father, who was Nigerian and not American, did this, turned him in, and sent word to the authorities. And a Senegalese merchant was one of the first, unreported, but was one of the first people to see the Times Square attempted bomber. Our opponents have a very simplistic outlook on this, on the world and what's currently at stake. They see it being Islam versus the West. But the truth is, it's not. It's between moderates and extremists of all kinds. And I urge you to vote for the motion because the overwhelming majority of Muslims, the facts are clear. They are peaceful, they're mainstream, and they condemn violence against civilians and have no interest in terrorism, which is consistently, as the woman in the audience said, are attacking Muslims, mainstream Muslims, every day, brutally and oppressing them because we don't accept their version of Islam. I'm asking for your help, as other people, as people of reason and of people of a moderate voice, to support us as we fight them, and we are fighting them, although we don't hear it as often in the media, which focuses on violence and fear. But the fact is, Muslims have always been fighting them.
Zeba Khan, your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our motion is, Islam is a religion of peace, and here to summarize his position against the motion, Douglas Murray, best-selling author, founder, and director of the Center for Social Cohesion.
Thank you. Well, thank you for a very enlightening, I think, debate tonight. I think we, on this side, made it very clear that we don't think there's a fight between Islam and the West, or Islam and civilization, or anything else like that. We've made a very clear set of points tonight. And one of those points, which I hope people will bear in mind, is we have said repeatedly that it is in Muslims and their critical faculties, Muslims and their behavior, Muslims and their faith, that we have hope. And it is in people like you that we have hope for the future. And if the motion were that Islam a century from now could be a religion of peace, and people would be quoting Zeba and Majid and seminal moments like this, and that they had learned from it, well, that would be terrific. But at the moment, tonight, you're being asked to vote on whether Islam is now a religion of peace. Is Islam a religion of peace? I think it is very clear that it is not. This does not mean, of course it doesn't mean, that Muslims are all violent. We would never make that point. We never have made that point. Nor does it mean that there isn't hope in the future. Nor does it mean that we have to have continual clashes till the end of time. But it means we have to start by being honest. We have to be frank about what we see in Islamic history, in Islamic conquests, and in Islamic scripts. We have to be frank about that. In societies which Islam dominated, conquered, and subdued the peoples in the Middle Ages, people who were not Muslims were sometimes allowed to remain in those societies, but they were allowed to do so only by having second-class status, dhimmi status. I would ask you tonight, ladies and gentlemen, not to be dhimmis, not to have second-class status, not to vote for things because you think it's polite or because you think you have to say them, but because you think they're true. On that basis, the idea you could vote for the motion tonight is absurd. Islam is palpably, demonstrably, evidently not a religion of peace. Vote against this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Our motion is Islam is a religion of peace, and our final speaker to argue for the motion that Islam is a religion of peace, Majid Nawaz, director of the Quilliam Foundation and formerly a member of a radical Islamist party.
Thank you. Right, so I'm not going to ask you to be polite. I would dread to think that that's why you'd vote for the motion. In fact, what I'd like to do is give you 4 reasons to vote, basically 4 reasons why the panel's arguments are incorrect and 4 reasons then to vote for the motion. And as for the failure of the panel, I think number 1 is that there's a failure to contextualize. As I've tried to say time and time again, there's a failure to contextualize history and texts and sources, and there's an intellectual suspension that occurs when discussing Islam that simply doesn't occur when discussing the Constitution or any other piece of literature or writing. Secondly, there's a failure to disclose, and as we've heard from the panel, both of them, and there's nothing wrong with this by the way, both of them are not believers of any faith, and that's their perfect right to do so, but they've made it clear their real agenda is with all religions. And I think we have to be honest with ourselves, that actually religions can and have historically played much good, and have come to much good in the world, including the Reformation, despite the fact we have to contextualize it. Thirdly, there's a failure to nuance, and as we've heard, gross generalizations about Islam by quoting isolated passages are being made. And fourthly, there's failure to be honest. And that honesty is in refusing to recognize that the vast majority of Muslims, where there have been democratic elections, have refused to turn in the extremists, as the examples I cited in Bangladesh and Pakistan. Now please vote for the motion, and the reason I'd say that is reclaim Islam. Don't let the minority hijack it. Yes, even for those of you who are not Muslims, reclaim it, because it's a faith like all other faiths that does need to be redefined in current times. Secondly, vote for peace. This is not a vote for Islam. It's a vote for peace, and I'm sure all of us want peace. And thirdly, I'd say, help the confused Muslims in the world, the faction, the minority, the young minds, like I was, who are confused, help them make up their minds by giving them guidance, by giving them an olive branch, and voting for peace tonight. And finally, I'd say that even if you're unsure, even if you think Islam is not a religion for peace, I would ask all of you here tonight to vote, as we've heard the admission from the other panel, it can be a religion of peace, so vote for what you'd like Islam to be. If you'd like Islam to be a religion of peace, vote for it.
Thank you. Thank you. Majid Nawaz. And that concludes our closing statements, and now it's time to learn. It's all in now. I've been given the results. Remember, the team that changes the most minds is declared our winner, and here it is. Our motion is Islam is a religion of peace. Before the debate, 41% were for the motion, 25% were against, and 34% were undecided. After the debate, 36% are for the motion, 55% against, 9% undecided. The side against the motion wins. Congratulations to them. Thank you from me, John Donvan, and Intelligence Squared US.